Coming up on this episode of the Sendy Mom podcast.
And I said to these people, these executives, I said, please never start something with at least, or well, the silver lining, or everything happens for a reason. And like nobody who's gone through crisis or grief is like, wow, I'm super glad that happened. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was absolutely heartbreaking and awful. And the question, though, is through the grief, do you get enough clarity to say, what does this mean? Can I grow? Who can I become?
I'm Becky Brower, and I'm a Sendy Mom. Welcome to the Sendy Mom podcast. Hello and welcome to the Sendy Mom podcast. I am really excited to be here with my good friend Meredith Parfet. Meredith and I are kind of new friends. I met her husband last summer. When I met you, I thought this is a power couple, like seriously. So I mean, you're like the head CEO of crisis management company, as well as a death doula, like so many things that you've done in your life, and I'm super excited to unpack all of those things. I guess what I meant is that I met Bo in the gym. He was the first one that I met, and he's mountain climber extraordinaire, like has climbed Everest how many times? Like 3 times or something?
Yeah, 3 times.
So that's kind of where we kind of started talking about the Sendy Mom and things like that. And so I am so excited to talk to you because your sendiness has been, I mean, some physical things. You're a great skier and do a lot of other exciting adventures that we're going to talk about, but also like within business and coming to terms with death. Understanding death from personal experience as well as from the experience of many other people, and also learning how to teach yourself how to deal with grief and with crisis when it comes up. So I think this is going to be super useful to all of my listeners. So I appreciate your being here. Just a little bit of background about Meredith. So she is the CEO and founder of Ravenyard Group, and they manage crisis for very big companies. When there's something other than when it happens in a big company in a big way, then Meredith's the one that you call to kind of manage all of those kinds of things. She is also a humanist hospice chaplain and helps with as a death doula, helps people out of this life, like to transition to the next stage of their journey, so to say. So the other thing that I think is really fun is that, really cool is Meredith is also given a TED Talk, which is not an easy thing to do and took a lot of preparation and understanding to be able to do that. And I'll link her TED Talk also in the show notes because it is worth listening to about how to deal with grief in the workplace, which is, it's different than doing it at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So also, let's see, managed a hedge fund, including serving as COO for 2 alternative investment funds. She is a philanthropist with her husband as well, which I love. And she's super sendy. She likes to, with her pickup, drive down country roads and head towards fishing lines, hiking trails, and ski runs. She is living proof that courage doesn't always look bold. It often looks honest, steady, and willing to walk straight into the hard stuff.
Thank you. That's kind. That's a nice intro. Thanks.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to have you here with me. I guess the first question I like to ask people is twofold. So what do you think being a Sendy Mom means? And how do you think you are a Sendy Mom?
So I loved thinking about those questions in prep because you and I both have sons. And so when you have boys, there's this kind of automatic, like you hear send it on the ski mountain. You hear send it if you're going to do something that's physically risky is usually when I hear it towards me. And so originally when I was thinking of the topic, I was like, well, this is about taking risks. This is about fear and bucket list kind of things, right? Jumping off of objects or out of planes or doing things that are dangerous. And after you and I have talked a couple of times, I've revised that there's a bigger heart question and a bigger purpose question about being sendy, and that it is about maybe risk and danger, but as much about like, are we willing to take risks internally? Are we willing to face hard things? Are we willing to grow in ways that we wouldn't have expected? And that for as many times as I'm standing on the edge of a ski hill with my children and they're saying, send it, those aren't the moments that have tested me to be brave.
Hmm.
And so you've helped me think about it differently, that it's really an inner quality more than it is an adventure quality.
Well, and belief in yourself is hard for most people,
Mm.
right? And we doubt ourselves and we're afraid of so many different things. We have fear of so many different things. We have fear of rejection. We have fear of loss. We have fear of not having enough of what we think that we need, or not being enough of what we think we need to be, or whatever. And so I love the idea of being sendy doesn't necessarily mean jumping off of a cliff. Oftentimes it just means putting yourself out there, being vulnerable
Mm.
so that you can connect with other people. So I appreciate that. So how did you start? Did you start out? Like, give me your background of your family, the family dynamics you had, and maybe some things you learned or didn't learn about taking risks.
Born and raised in Colorado, so spent most of my childhood outdoors doing fishing and hiking and all the things that I love to do today and find really grounding and renewing are things that emerged from my childhood. I would say both of my parents are spiritual travelers in their own way. My dad has lived all over the world. He did the Peace Corps when he turned 50. Like he just kind of has this intrepid sense of like, well, I'd like to go and try that, or I'd like to go to this place and be there. My mom was both an entrepreneur my whole life and an artist. And so she worked in business, but has also just cultivated this gorgeous art. And what they both taught me was this sense of using all the different parts of me to show up, that I could
Hmm.
be business, but that I also needed to have an inner world, that I could love big cities, but want to be renewed in the mountains. And so there was never a sense of limitation on who I could be or what I could be based on my parents. They're these like remarkable, amazing humans. I also will say I faced a lot of early losses. So especially in my 20s, I had a younger sister who died very suddenly and tragically. It was both this absolutely cataclysmic thing for me personally and for my family. But what I would say of family of origin was it was an opportunity to witness my parents face grief and walk grief and watch the ways that they have emerged from it as these really, really remarkable human beings, even today. And that it brought them to their knees as a loss like that would. But my mother is still a gorgeous artist. My dad is still this gentle, present, kind soul. And so I've been extremely lucky, even with big losses, that my parents are these wonderful humans that still encourage me to be sendy, even after lots of losses.
And it sounds like they were a really good example to you about moving through difficult times and coming out on the other side, the same person, but also different. Being able to still enjoy your hobbies and the things that you have loved for so long, but also being able to embrace the different emotions that have come out as you've, gone through this loss and
One of your
grief.
questions that you sent to me in advance that I've been thinking a lot about is what kind of lessons did you learn from like your parents? And one of the things that at any point it just echoes in my mind that if at any point of suffering in my life, my mother has said, well, you will feel better if you give back to someone else. Even if it was my own loss, her remedy was always to serve others. And that has been this guiding light, especially as I've navigated grief, to make meaning out of it, was that if you want to teach someone resiliency or you want to teach them how to survive hard things, you do it by asking them to serve others. And that is both healing and what moves us forward.
And you have really embraced that in your life, I know, with all the philanthropy and things that you do, which is admirable and inspirational as well. So, and I totally agree. I wanted to kind of go back to, in your 20s when your sister passed away, and you're talking about what your parents kind of went through and watching them. Were you really aware of that when you were 20? When I was 20, I was so self-involved, I think it's really kind of cool. Or is this kind of going back and looking back at the way that they handled things?
I've just watched this gentle emergence over 20 years. So I do have the benefit of a lot of hindsight to
Mm-hmm.
re-examine that loss.
Mm.
No, I mean, in the moment, grief is so catastrophic, and there's no easy or pretty or kind of noble way through it. It's usually quite messy for everyone, and that's understandable. But even from the beginning, what I watched my parents model for me was asking a lot of questions about the grief and wondering about, I just remember my mom being like, what am I supposed to do with this? Who am I supposed to become because of this? And she did that almost from the beginning of what is the meaning behind this. And I've carried that forward. I always say that my best teachers in grief have been my parents, watching them.
Yeah. I think Viktor Frankl said something at one point, suffering ceases to be suffering when you attach meaning to it. And I think that is, it is really true. There's so many people, and we talked about this before when we were talking about, because I had this little moment where I was really focused on suffering because I had people in my life who just continued to want to suffer. And I felt like it made them feel like they were better because they were suffering. And I started thinking about like the experiences that I've had in my life and the choices that I've made because of those that have caused me to not have to suffer as much as other people do. I don't know, do you feel like how were your parents able to move through all of this suffering and come out on the other end without completely, falling apart? Because there's plenty of people who get a divorce, after a child dies and, just can't find themselves again.
I think falling apart is a natural part of grief, and that you have to. You can't avoid that piece of it. That if the grief is cataclysmic enough, you don't avoid the mess. But I think that when you are in the mess, there's no necessarily moving through it to some other side, but there is a getting to know it and asking. I always say you have to interrogate your grief. You have to ask questions. And that's how you get to the meaning is by saying, well, what is this pain, or what is this loss, or who am I inside it? Or are there healthy coping styles? Are there unhealthy coping styles? And
Yeah.
for me, for better or worse, I've had grief a number of times in my life. And so it wasn't actually on the first or second or third or 10th go round that I really had deep thoughts about it. But eventually, as I progressed, I went, oh, I wonder if there's a better way to do this. I wonder if there's a more skillful way, a gentler way for myself, a less self-destructive way. So it was almost like I had to practice grief for a really, really long time. To come to a point where it felt familiar enough to say, am I able to watch myself as a griever and then wonder what else there is for me? But it's not an overnight thing.
Yeah. No, and and it's a continuous process, right? Of building yourself and learning things from the experience you've had. So tell me about some of these experiences that you had that have taught you. Like sometimes this is a hard question to ask because I don't want to like delve too far into, the trauma or whatever, but I think it's interesting to find what are these stories that bring out these things in you.
Yeah. I had my own near death in childbirth with my oldest son, and a doctor cut one of my arteries, and I ended up with a big clot in my abdomen for a long time. And as anyone knows about childbirth, at the end of it, they hand you a baby, and then you're like,
Right?
wait a minute. So
Now what?
I had had my own near death, and
Yeah.
had a baby that I had to, I was in the hospital for a while, and then I had to go home, and I have a husband and lots of people who love me, but at the end of the day it was kind of me and a baby reckoning with my mortality and this continuum of life and death all in this very compressed moment.
Yeah.
And it was my first child. I was a new mom. And so I spent a lot of time where people would say things to me like, well, at least you have a healthy child. Of course, like obviously. And I nearly died at the same time. And so there was this kind of back and forth for me of saying, wow, am I supposed to not feel bad about almost losing my own life? I feel kind of bad about that. And so it was a time of a lot of reflection about new life and near death and who am I in this? And feeling, kind of like all new moms, a little invisible, totally out of your depth. I-
Right.
And
Going to from 0 to 1 is very difficult.
yes,
That's
0 to
the
1
hardest
is
part.
it's like 0 to 100 and then you have 101 and you kind of go
Yeah,
on from there.
exactly.
So that was a time of both celebration and grief for me. And yet I had this little person that I really loved that was dependent on me as the mom. And so there were questions about my own grief in that of like, what am I allowed to do? Or
Yeah.
can I feel this bad? Or how do I feel this bad and take care of this child
And what
in
do
a way?
people expect me to be? Those are some of the feelings when I was younger too, like, I don't know, how am I supposed to feel? How do other people feel? And then people say things that are kind of hurtful but you think, "Oh, maybe that is how I should feel."
Right. I mean, I think there's an inherent kind of loneliness and confusion for every mother that's very isolating. I don't mean to project, maybe other people don't feel that way, but that it can be very lonely to try and sort through all the expectations people have for you.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I was really reckoning with my own mortality. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so what would you recommend to new mothers, and when they're having these kind of experiences? Because I mean, when you give birth, I mean, yes, so you had your artery, you had a blood clot.
no, so my oldest son was breech.
Okay.
Would not flip, would not turn, nothing. So they did a C-section routine, and the doctor just happened to nick my artery as they were sewing me up and didn't notice it. And so I bled out for almost 8 hours.
Yeah.
And it was such an interesting reckoning again of being a new mom because in the moment I was saying to the nurses, like, I just don't feel very good. You're a new mom.
Yeah.
New mommies don't feel good. No,
Right.
something isn't right. And I was very polite about it and very just conforming to what I thought I was supposed to do. And in
Yeah.
retrospect, I wish that I'd stood up and been like, something is wrong. But I didn't advocate for myself. I just was like, well, like, this is, and I think we do that to moms, right? We tell them what it's supposed to be like, and we kind of deny their experience of it. Uh, so for me, it was this, I didn't advocate for myself. I just did what I thought. I was like, well, I guess that's what new moms feel like. Wow, this is terrible. Until I coded in front of them and all the, alarms started going off and they rushed me back to surgery.
Wow. Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can't even imagine. And Bo was probably going nuts at
Oh
that
yeah.
point.
I don't remember, but he tells me that he handed the baby to his sister and ripped all the cords out of the wall so that people started running when I collapsed. And so
Wow.
yeah, it was such a moment of change for me, not just because of my beautiful son, but because of ways that I look back wishing that I had been my own.
Better advocate for
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. I know. Well, and it takes a long time to get there because I think, when you're young, you are told what to do because you teach your children how to manage life, right? How to be on this earth. And so you're used to being told what to do. And so then when you're a mom, this transition, it takes some time to understand and nobody teaches you how to do that. You have to kind of figure it out yourself. Although it can be helpful to teach your children to advocate for themselves. And I don't know, I wasn't taught how to do that.
No, many women I know were not taught how to do that. We were taught to be polite and smooth things, you know.
And take responsibility for everything. Like it must be your fault.
Yeah. Or like, I'm sorry to be a bother here, but I think I'm bleeding out, like,
Right. Exactly. I don't know. How do you think you can teach your kids to better advocate for themselves? Have you had experiences like that with your own children where, Like, okay, your oldest son is going, he just got into a boarding school, right?
He hasn't gotten in
Somewhere.
yet, but yeah, he's looking at boarding schools and is
Is this something that he's 15? Is that right?
almost 15.
Almost 15. Okay. And is this something that he kind of chose for himself? Like he's looking at the boarding schools that he wants to go to?
Yeah, yeah. For him, his advocacy has come, he's very dyslexic. And so it's been a lesson for teaching him how to advocate if he doesn't understand something. And that advocacy is nothing to be embarrassed of, because I think often the times we have to advocate for ourselves is around things that are not normal, right? Or not what is expected of us. And so teaching him to say, I didn't understand that. Can you read that out loud?
Mhm.
He's a
Yeah.
very cool, cute, fun teenage boy. And he's like, has to say, speak up. I don't understand what you're saying, or I need you to read that. And so learning, I think, the humility of self advocacy, actually, that you have to step around the like, what if I'm embarrassed about this? And go, and my second child has hearing issues. And it's the same thing where I said, well, he said, oh, I got in trouble on the playground because the teacher thought I wasn't listening. And I said, well, what did you say? Well, nothing. I go, well, then that might happen again. And I said, what would it look like if you told them that you don't hear well and that that's a form of you getting what you need out of this? And so advocacy is uncomfortable. It usually puts a spotlight on us on things that we don't want. And yet, in my case, it would have made my life a lot safer if I had advocated for myself. And we all have to do it at some point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, and I love that you actually took the time after the experience with your son and you kind of rewound it and helped him to understand what actually happened in that situation, that it's going to happen again. And what are you going to do the next time this happens? Because I think that's really important. My youngest son, he's 15, and he was kind of having some trouble with friends, like finding good friends and everything. So I actually used an example from my older son who did this. And I think this is a problem that a lot of people have, is like they're not happy with their, the kids they feel sad for their kids because their kids aren't finding friends or something like that. And so that's why I bring this up. But so I said, well, you know what your brother did when he was in seventh grade? He decided he was going to find a friend. He wanted a friend. And so he sat in the lunchroom and he watched these kids and he found the kid that he really wanted to be friends with. And then he just went over and he sat by his friend group. Like the whole time he just kind of inched a little closer every time at lunch and would just be with them. And pretty soon they got to be really good friends. And it's still his best friend. He's 20 now and they're still really, really good friends. And so I told my youngest son that. And so he really thought about it. And that day he came home and he said he had done that. And then a couple days later, he says he's walking around campus with these kids and one of them said they were talking about who's the most underrated, friend in our friend group. And they said it was him. And he felt so good. He's like,
Yep.
I have friends now.
Yeah.
So, you can advocate for yourself when you've got disabilities or when you've got, things that, medical issues, things that are not right with you in your body. You can also advocate for your community as
Yes.
well
Yes.
and how you can make things better. And man, that translates to all sorts of things. You can be such a force for good
Mm.
if you are advocating for those who cannot advocate for themselves or for yourself or to become, I don't know, to become to reach your potential, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
What I
That's
love
amazing.
about what you're saying, especially as moms, is the impulse is to want to take away resistance or take away adversity and to rescue our children, right? It's just more comfortable. I'm like, oh, I'll just do it. I'll take care of that. And that doesn't equip them. And that giving them this like nudge to say, well, here's a way you might advocate for yourself, or here's what it would sound like, or what you inch over at the lunchroom table, giving them ideas for how to do it for themselves. I think those are the skills of a lifetime. And that then you want to know what translates into being sendy. It's that advocacy. It's that confidence to say, oh, I can do things that scare me. And I have the resources to do things that scare me. And I can take care of
Yeah.
myself. Yeah,
Exactly. And it's exposure therapy, right? You do it enough times and then it becomes normalized. And
totally.
then you're like, it's okay to get rejected. I've been rejected before, but maybe I won't this time,
Yeah,
and you just have to keep doing it. And that is definitely part of being Sendy.
yeah.
So let's go back before you lost your sister and like your teenage years and things like that. Because I'm really curious. I mean, I think that was probably the impetus for you going into so deeply into grief. What were some of the things that you were trying to accomplish when you were in high school? And do you still have some of those dreams that you had back then? And what did you feel like you were really good at?
In high school, that's a good question. I was always a good student, but I don't think I followed a linear path or even really knew what I wanted to become. I am a late bloomer. I am almost 50 years old, and I'm like, okay, I think I might have a few ideas now. But it took me, it wasn't on a straight path. I don't know that I knew in high school. And I took a lot of wrong turns. And yeah, I think the challenge for me actually in high school was that a lot of people had expectations for me of you're going to be this kind of an achiever, or you need to do this kind of success, and that there was all this pressure on me, and I'm a terrible perfectionist, and so it was crippling to actually not know what to do or how
Oh,
to follow it. And that only through the series of like really catastrophic failures did I actually come to a point where I was like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do in the world. I have meaning. I understand purpose. It wasn't from
yeah.
some directed sense. It was failing enough times to be like, I lived through that. I lived through that. Okay. I could probably set some big goals and achieve them because I have fewer restrictions on what my mind tells me is possible. I grew up in a pretty conservative household, and there was a lot of rules around me and who I was supposed to become. And
Mhm.
so I don't know. I think my mom and I've talked about it a million times of there are many ways where she pushed me as an achiever, which was great. And there are many ways that I wish I'd had more freedom to not be such an achiever and just to test things out.
Okay. So how do you balance that now? Because you're still definitely an achiever. You do a lot of things. Is But sometimes that's where your happy place is. I like to be doing, and that's exciting to me.
Well, I mean, I think you just started your coaching training.
Uh-huh.
Don't you think that at a certain point it shifts from needing to achieve to needing to just being curious about things? Because that was the shift that happened to me was I was an achiever because I checked a lot of boxes and then I felt unsatisfied by it versus when I started to just follow a path because I was curious, then the achievement wasn't about an accolade. It was just a like, oh, I wonder what that would feel like. Even the TED Talk was this kind of like, well, I've never done that before. What would that be like? Yeah, I think that at some point there was a shift where the achievement was about curiosity. Maybe part of chaplaincy did that for me because when I told friends that I wanted to go back and get a master's degree and work as a hospice chaplain and a death doula, people were like, that's so weird. And that kind of like that was not about achievement. That was just this longing that I felt that
Yeah.
and took me down a path. And I think it's listening to the longing more than the achievement piece that
I actually
changed.
really love that a lot because sometimes, because I do struggle with that, like understanding what that balance is between achievement and because I pushed myself my whole life. And I think now I am in this stage of like just curiosity. I love doing the podcast because I
Yeah.
get to meet such amazing people and find out how they're courageous and whatever. And then the life coaching, of course, too. I'm just learning so much about myself and how to help other people to more healthy thoughts, I guess, not like good thoughts necessarily, just more help think more healthily about their lives. And so yeah, so I can see that. But at the same time, there's this little piece of me that's like wants to achieve, like wants to, like have the recognition or have the, I don't know. Yeah.
My
Whatever.
my friend Natalie calls them ego biscuits. She's
Right.
like, "They're little snacks for our ego." I mean, who doesn't like that? Like everybody likes.
Human, right? That's super human.
But to me, it's like what motivates it. And is what's motivating it a sense of loss or a sense of like not being enough? Or what motivating it is a sense of inquiry and curiosity and fun. And like it's why are you doing it, I think. Because when you talk about the podcast, you just light up. You didn't do that for an achievement. You did it out of curiosity. And there's an achievement that goes with it.
Sure. Okay. That's the way I'm going to look at it. Thank you, Meredith. That's great. I know. I love that. Okay. So let's kind of go back to the grief stuff
Okay,
because you
sure.
said you've had several. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we do all the levels, right? So you said you've had several experiences that kind of have taken you into crisis mode. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I was obviously running this 20-year journey of personal loss. So, my sister, number of family members, my own near death, that then took me down a path of being curious about death and dying and grief that led me to hospice. So there was that. Meanwhile, I was working professionally at a pretty high level. I always worked in finance, and I was inside of a business, a financial services firm that invested in a fraud. It wasn't our fraud. We didn't know about it. It was absolutely catastrophic for our investors and was major public failure. I mean,
Um,
like investigations and all forms of kind of cleaning up a business that failed.
and you were an executive on this in
Yeah,
this
I
business.
was the COO.
Okay.
And so that was in 2018. And at that point I'd been a griever in the personal sense for a long, long time. And that was the first instance of grief for me where I woke up almost day one and said, this feels like someone died. And
Mm,
people have pushed me on that over the years because they're like, well, obviously the loss of a person isn't the same as the loss of a business. Of course, they're different.
yeah.
But the feeling of grief, of identity loss, just utter humiliation, a complete reorientation of who I was, what I thought I was good at. This, talk about achievement. I'd had a pretty perfect, top 10 schools and a perfect MBA and all of these things that I was very attached to that went away like this. And the loss of community, every piece of it was so heartbreaking and devastating and confusing. All these people I cared about who lost money, all these investors, like the whole thing was grief.
Yeah.
And that, in many ways, the most transformative for me to see this through line of grief across my life and then say, now what am I supposed to do with this?
Mm,
Now, how do I integrate this? That was when you say, what do I want to be when I grow up? It was in that moment or those years of trying to clean it up and fix it and have integrity in the middle of this entire kind of blow up that I said, I think there's meaning to be found in this. I think there's something I should offer to others. I think there's lessons to learn that could help people over time. And so from that, our business was born, was to say,
wow.
what can we offer people in times of crisis professionally that both would be technically sound and good advice strategically, but also the question that kept coming up for me was, could I be a chaplain? Could I care for people's grief in that setting? If they were the CEO or the executive team, could I care for them in the way that I do for my patients? And what I found was grief is pretty universal and people need to be cared for, and they can't make good decisions if you're not supporting them. And so that was the emergence of our business.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and, so basically from the ashes of this, you could have been a colossal failure, right?
Wait,
Grew-
what?
And are you so glad that it happened though?
No, no. I always say that to people. I would never wish worst case scenarios on anyone. No one
Okay.
comes back and says, it's funny, I gave a grief training yesterday and I said to these people, these executives, I said, please never start something with at least or, well, the silver lining, or everything happens
Okay.
for a reason. And like nobody who's gone through crisis or grief is like, wow, I'm super glad that happened. It was awful.
Okay.
It was absolutely heartbreaking and awful.
Hmm.
And the question, though, is through the grief, do you get enough clarity to say, what does this mean? Can I grow? Who can I become? And
Hmm.
that for me was the only way to make sense of it, was to
Mm.
say, is there something I am meant to be to help others because of this? Because
Yeah.
otherwise you would just have it happen and then be like, what is the point here?
Yeah. Why are we doing that?
Why are we doing all of this suffering?
Yeah. So do you find your clients are able to kind of get to that point? Has that been really helpful for them?
We hope so. We have a very tender relationship with our clients because we see them at these vulnerable moments, and because we go in with this recognition that at the end of the day, they want to be loved and cared for and
Sure.
supported. And so what I hope is they come away with a sense of our solidarity for them. Many
Yeah.
of them reach out years later and say, we were thinking about this thing that you taught us, or you helped us get through something really pivotal, and thank
Yeah.
you. And that makes my work kind of amazing now.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that, like, even if you're an executive of a company or a really famous person, you still are human and you still have emotions that you have to work through. And you're almost held to a higher standard because there are so many people looking at you. So that brings even more stress to your grief, I guess. And so having to manage that, you need somebody to kind of help
Yeah.
with that.
I mean, I feel like humans need support, full stop. And when we look out into the world, you can look out and say, where can I help? And so in my hospice work, I work a shift almost every Monday when I'm home. And often those are not CEOs, those are
Yeah.
normal people with a lot.
Neighbors.
Yeah, and that I feel like my job is to show up for them. But what's unique about working with the CEOs is I speak their language. And so there is an ability for me to translate in, having had a lot of finance and a lot of the same kind of degrees and positions of power, that I feel like it's an opportunity to influence them at really
Yeah.
pivotal times. That if I'm in the middle of a crisis, that I can help a leader make a good decision that benefits their employees, that protects the environment, that is good legislatively, like whatever. If I can be a benevolent voice in that situation, encouraging them to do good even inside the crisis, then I feel like that's an influence that's useful.
Well, and I guess that's probably why they use you. That's why, because they still have to make decisions for their company, even if they are going through whatever crisis it happens to be, whether it's a personal crisis or a company crisis, they still have to make those decisions. And so having somebody to help them at least see things clearly and make some plans would be beneficial.
Well, and we always laugh that if someone wants to hire us to spin something, they're never going to hire us because that's not the type of work that we do. Our job is not to smooth over or to hide things or to just make it go away. What we want is to fix problems with integrity. And
Yeah.
that is the path towards integrity to say, this is what's required of you to do good with this terrible crisis. That those are the people that hire us to say, okay,
Right.
yeah, we want to fix this versus no, smooth it over and pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Nobody hires us for that. We don't do that work.
We're about halfway through this episode of the Sendy Mom podcast. I'd like to take a moment to encourage you to be Sendy and share this episode with someone who is experiencing grief in any form. There is hope that you can rise from the ashes. The best way you can promote Sendy Mom is by reviewing, liking, and sharing this content. Be sure to subscribe to sendymom.com and to the Sendy Mom podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. If any of this has resonated with you, help me get the message out to more people. Just click the subscribe button on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or anywhere you listen. It costs nothing. My next guest is Brittany Barney. She is a certified forest therapy guide with 7 children and a part-time job as a school music teacher. Brittany has found time to publish a book about her experiences with seeking the divine through prayer. You will love our very honest conversation. The Sendy Mom website is found at sendymom.com. Be sure to subscribe to get all of the updates on events that are happening, as well as a newsletter every time I publish a new blog post. These companion blog articles that come out when I publish an episode clarify the lessons and tools learned from the conversations I have. So what are you waiting for? Go subscribe now. And now back to my conversation with Meredith. So what are some of the things that you do to help people process the emotions, those big emotions they're having?
I often wonder if other people's brain responds the way that mine does, but I find that in times of crisis, I need order. I need people to make sense of things and make it simple and concrete and laid out. I think most of us have that with our brains, that crisis is chaos, right? It just feels like overwhelming. We don't know what to do next. We can't see the timeline. So a lot of what I bring, both in hospice and in my work, is just to be orderly and process. Here's your checklist. Here's what you do tomorrow. Here's the timeline. You don't have to think about it. We'll build that out for you. And let's write that out. Let's draw the decision tree. Okay, if you do this, it's this way. If you do this, it's this way. And it works in business settings because they know these tools, right? Timelines, decision trees. But it works in hospice too. The number of times that I'll see a family member who says, I can't find all the passwords, or I don't know what to do with all the bank accounts, or I'm worried about some logistic insurance.
Yeah.
They need order too. It's just the way I think human brains work, at least mine. And so that's what we try and bring a lot of. It's just very pragmatic
Well,
organization.
sometimes if your mind can latch on to that order, I think it helps you to have a purpose. I mean, that just gives you the meaning, right? And a step forward. Like, okay, well, maybe I can't deal with this huge emotion right now, but I can take this one step, and maybe the emotions kind of simmer a little bit until your body is ready to handle those, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. An amazing, and to think about it as a mom, right? How often do we just need to give our kids step one, right? Just kind of get them moving in a direction, and then they've got it.
I think it's with boys, especially with boys, they can only do one thing at a time. So I try to give them a list, like, okay, go do this and this and this. They wouldn't do any of them, but if I could tell them just one thing, they would generally go do it. So yeah.
I do have two boys.
Yes, you get that, right? Yes. Well, okay, tell me what is working really well in your life right now.
Ooh, what is working really, really well? One of the things that works really, really well for me is to play outside. And I know that you know that as another friend in the mountain time
Yes.
zone. I am so lucky to live in a place that's close to nature, because the more my work has picked up, the more intense my schedule has become, the more grateful I am for proximity to nature and proximity to being outside. And a few moments of sunshine and a mountain and a walk are an absolute gift. And it calms my nervous system down. And I think one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about for 2026 is, how do I build capacity, not time? So it's not like I need more time in the day, because I think if there was more time, I would just fill it. I need more space, more head space, heart space, less anxiety, more capacity to hold things.
Okay.
And the only way I find that is if I have enough time in nature to kind of remind me to take a breath.
Yeah, because it takes a lot of energy to worry, a lot of energy to have bad feelings towards somebody. All those negative kind of thoughts take a lot of energy. And so if you can reset yourself by being in nature or doing some thought work or things like that, it can really help to stabilize everything else in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I want to be there for people, but I find the more I take on, the more it weighs on me. That nature works for me.
Yeah.
It works best for
Do you,
me.
do you try to get out every day?
I do. Yeah. I
Yeah.
do something outside every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause sometimes, I imagine I look at you and I think, man, she's so productive. She does so many things. How does she get all done? And yeah, how do you get it all done? How are you able to like be?
I don't. And yet, just like you were saying, the curiosity is what motivates you. That if it's a feeling of, oh, my to-do list is too long, then I feel weighed down. Whereas I've been working on a side project that my business partner is teasing me about because she's like, were you up until midnight, generating AI models of crisis? And I was like, I was. She's like, what? I'm like, because
Love
I'm
that.
super excited about it and I have all these questions and I'm like engaged and
That's
so
awesome.
to me, you make time for things that are exciting and interesting. And I don't know, if you're
And
curious, it doesn't feel like a to-do list.
And you don't have to have anybody else be interested. And you have to make time for the things that you want to do and not necessarily what you think that somebody else thinks you should be
Yep.
using your time for. So,
Yep.
so yeah, I totally agree with that.
I mean, curiosity is just the most powerful mechanism to change your life. And so people say the same to me about working hospice shifts. They're like, you want to go do that every week? I'm like, 10 years in. I'm about to hit my 10-year anniversary with hospice.
Amazing.
I am curious about that experience every time I go there. 10 years. And I'm like, why would I give up something that fuels my sense of purpose, my curiosity, my learning, my growth, my ability to contribute? Like, no way, I'm not giving that up.
Okay, so tell me all of these lessons that you're learning doing hospice.
Oh, you want me to just tell you all of them?
Yeah, all of them. No, tell me some of the lessons that you've learned. Like, what are some things that people are, think about at the end of life and that they're curious about or that they're, feel bad about or whatever, regretful?
Okay, we'll do it along the sendy theme, along the send it theme. They don't think as much about their bucket list as you would imagine. Like, it's rarely like, I wish I jumped out of an airplane or taken a trip to Europe or like, it's rarely the kind of traditional bucket list send it types of things that we would imagine. It's usually either some form of regret that there was something unfinished, that there was something unsaid, relationships that weren't healed. And so to me, again, it's about that inner risk taking and about that inner willingness to say, can I turn and face a relationship that's painful for me and apologize or say what needs to be said, even if what comes back to me is not what I want? And that inner resolution and turning towards our hardest emotions, those are often what show up in the form of regret on people's death. On the positive side, what people think about is, again, less about big adventures that they took and more about the everyday things that they did that they loved. And so I always laugh because if someone loved to fish, I will always hear about it on their deathbed, partly because I love to fish. And so then it becomes this like, oh, you do? Where did you like to fish? But that I always laugh and say fishing is this metaphor for people. It's outdoor. It usually is between generations, right? My dad taught me how to fish. My grandfather taught me how to fish. I fish with my children. So often we think about the things that brought us very simple joy.
Mm.
And that simplicity of like, we talk about my husband as a mountain climber. He loves the achievement, don't get me wrong. But most of it is he loves to be in the mountains. He
Yeah.
loves it. He wants to hike every day. He wants to be in nature every day. And that's a very simple thing for him. It's not actually about the conquest of these tall peaks, but the act of doing it, he loves it. So
Mm.
it's our simple, repetitive pleasures that usually get us outside and connected with others that are what create meaning on people's deathbed.
Wow. Wow. And like when you say you're a chaplain, do you help or a death doula, I guess, do you help people with some of the negative feelings that they've
Mhm.
got to kind of settle them a little bit? Is that kind of?
Yeah. So a death doula gets about 8 to 12 weeks of training, very specific around the death and dying process. A chaplain typically requires a seminary degree. I have a master's in spiritual care and pastoral care. And that is a very old discipline around companioning people through different types of crisis. So there are military chaplains, hospital chaplains. I'm a hospice chaplain. And it usually centers around these times of big change and sometimes crisis or hardship. And so my job is to companion the dying. Sometimes they're scared. Sometimes they just want to tell their stories. Sometimes they need someone to hold their hand. Sometimes they have questions they want to talk through. And then it's also to be with the grieving, with their families, and to talk about their loss and the pain that that brings up and the confusing emotions of being in a family or being with someone you love and watching them die. And so I always frame it as my job is to companion people, which
Mm.
is just about sitting beside them as they go on their journey and offering comfort. I don't have any magical answers, but the practice for me is about, can I be an aware listener? Can I be in community with people and show them solidarity no matter where they are, no matter what they're facing?
Well, that's and really our whole existence here is about relationships
Mhm.
and about connecting, I think. And so it makes sense that, nobody wants to be alone on their deathbed, and so having somebody there to listen or to, and we shouldn't wait till we're on our deathbeds either. And that maybe that's a good lesson to remember too, is that like connect now with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. Okay, well, tell me a little bit about your ultimate goals with all of this. Like, are you going to just do this until you're on your deathbed or?
I don't know. I mean, I want to live alive for as long as I'm left here. And whatever that means, I want to be curious. I want to be engaged. I want to be busy. I want to be thinking about some new idea in the middle of the night and wondering if I can ponder it. I want to be growing. I want to push myself in my inner world to ask hard questions. I've been going back and forth all year about whether I'm going to write a book, and I don't know. I don't know. I am in inquiry about that.
Interesting. I looked you up to see if you had written any books because I wanted to read them.
Respect for authors and creators, right? I mean,
Mhm.
your podcast takes you so much time and effort, and it's an act of love, but it's also a lot of work.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I have that in me. And so I'm really wrestling with it. I have so much respect for people that create things from nothing, that it's a lot. And so I
You
don't
can
know. I'm in
you can
inquiry.
be creative very in a lot of different ways, and clearly you're very creative in the chaplaincy that you do and the crisis management you do.
Mm,
Isn't well, even just being a mother, you have to be so creative, right? so, that you're going to get that lots of different places. But if you ever do write a book, I'll read it for sure. All right.
that's waiting for me. I imagine it's there, but
Yeah. Yeah, you got to put the time into it, and you have to decide it's going to be fun. You have to be curious about it enough to want to get into it. Like, what if I could write a book? That would be kind of cool, right?
I mean, and part of it too is that idea of you're on the ski mountain and you're standing on the edge of the cliff. When I did the TED talk, I didn't really know what cliff I was jumping off of. And I learned a lot about the risk of putting yourself out there and how hard and how humbling it is and how scary it is. And so in some ways that made me more hesitant to write a book because um it takes a lot of risk. And so I kind of feel like I'm here holding my metaphorical ski poles, standing on the edge of my cliff, like,
And
I
I'm going,
think I
send it.
really said it. And I'm like, I'm not going, I'm like, sometimes you chicken out. And so that sense of risk and fear is about sending it, but it's also like, it's real. It's
Okay,
not.
so tell me what the fear is. I'm curious. What's the fear?
Scrutiny is hard and being picked apart is hard, and putting things out there that maybe people disagree with or think are stupid, or and that it's really humbling to do anything in public, especially with the way that social media works, and that it is extremely humbling.
It's very vulnerable and well, and not to mention how much work it is to do the marketing afterwards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's one thing to be just writing the book, but then you have to get it, need to get people to want to read it.
Writing of the book would be fine. I just don't want anyone to have to read it and then give me any criticism about it.
Yeah, no,
Like, no, thank you. I'm okay. And so like doing the TED Talk was actually quite fun, but the process afterwards of it being out in the world and then evaluating, like, I wish I'd done that differently, or man, this is the piece that people didn't like, or you know,
Mm.
what my
Yeah,
hair looked like.
no,
Everything
I
is
hear you. But yeah, and well, and probably the worst critic is yourself, it sounds like.
I don't know. I have a ruthless 11-year-old who likes to read me the negative comments, and read. Oh yeah, I mean he's a boy. He's like, bring it, mom. You think you're so cool? I'm gonna tell you why you're not cool at all.
Yeah, right. These
So
kids.
leave it to an 11-year-old boy to completely eviscerate you. But yeah. I mean, isn't that the thing? Is that the opposite of being sendy? Is that it's scary
Yeah.
and.
I'll tell you, like just using your analogy of standing on at the edge of the slope and it's scary
Mhm.
going down. That's actually what started me a little bit on this journey of doing this podcast because I was there and I've never been scared. But at this point, I was like standing at the top and I was looking down and I was scared, but it made me really mad. It was like, I should not be scared of this. And
Yes, and it's not about the outcome and it's not about the output. It's actually about my own experience of it. Although I will, if we're going to go with the skiing, how many times have you sent it and you get to the bottom, you're like, I looked pretty great. I did great. And then the time when you fall and it's so bad and you're like, and that's part of the process of taking risk, right? Is you fall. And so it's the reckoning with I might fall and I might fall 50 times and I might fall publicly and my skis go everywhere and I'm under the lift and everyone is laughing. That fear is real and we all have it.
And you can show up like that, and it
Yeah.
can be really messy. You could also show up, just laughing at yourself, or you could show up as there is no right way to do it. I mean, as far as like, I'll just tell you my little grieving story because I had a I had a little stillborn baby. It was heartbreaking. It was a really, really hard thing. And I remember thinking during that time, when I'm going through all this, what do people think I should do? What am I supposed to do? I remember sitting in the hospital after they told me I was by myself. My husband wasn't with me. I'd just gone in because I hadn't really felt her moving very much. And
Mm,
went in and they said, no baby. And I just sat there and just stunned, right? I was like, what do I do? I don't even know what to do. And it was so helpful to have a nurse there who could say, well, some people do this, some people do that, because I wasn't a very good advocate for myself. And you don't think about these experiences and how you're going to react to them. And so in some instances, it's really nice to have somebody tell you what other people do. But the other part of that is I got home and I'd have people tell me different things. And I'd have this person would say, like, oh, that's got to be so horrible. You must feel terrible. And that you didn't, exercise enough or, whatever, or you did too much. And so that's why, this happened. And, or you'd have people that, would tell you like, why are you so upset about this? This happens all the time, and so I found myself like going back and forth, like, how am I supposed to feel, And it took me a long time to realize there's no way that I can feel however I want to. This is my grief that I'm going through and I not judging myself because of it and not allowing anybody else's judgment to reflect on or to influence what I felt about myself. And that
mm,
was hard to do, when
mm.
you're in your 20s or early 30s, to do.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. There's some amazing nonprofits that do work around having stillborn babies because it's a very disenfranchised form of grief. We
Mhm.
quite invisible. We often push it on to the mother in particular to kind of carry that loss. And it is a real form of grief that is significant and life altering. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and lonely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is really lonely. And it actually has just been in the last year that I think I was finally able to kind of clear a lot of that junk out, and I know, I'd never wish any of this, but I am grateful for the journey
Yeah.
because it makes you who you are, so I guess maybe, in all of this crisis and all of, grief and things like that, it's the meaning, getting the meaning out of it and finding gratitude for the suffering that you've gone through because it's made you who you are. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. It just happens, right? And
Right.
so the way that you look at it. So, okay, well, I've kept you so long. But I've got a couple rapid fire questions if you've
Okay,
got.
great. Yep.
All right. So tell me first, what has brought you joy in the last 24 hours?
I got home after having been on the road for a few days and slept like the dead in my soft, cozy bed. And that was lovely. My husband took the boys to school and I got to sleep an extra hour. Just sometimes simple things like waking up in your own cozy bed feel amazing.
Yay. And especially when you actually get a full night's rest when you sleep hard. I love that. That's so good. Okay. What was the last TV show or documentary that you watched that you
Yeah, I
like?
thought you were gonna ask that. And then I was like, well, I could lie or I could just tell you it was Bridgerton. And then I could also lie. But before that, it was something really meaningful, but it wasn't. It was Emily in Paris. So, yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that. True confession.
No, don't be sorry. Because, like, honestly, if you're like constantly in so much seriousness, that's not healthy.
I know.
So, gotta have the balance.
I used to read and watch very serious things, but now my life feels serious. And so I only read trivial things and watch.
Perfect.
Yes.
That's what we should do for
Yeah.
sure. All right. What is a charity or nonprofit that you support?
So I would say this for all of your listeners. Everyone has a local hospice. I support my local hospice. Both I work there and it's true community care here in Boulder, Colorado, but I also donate to them and think hospice often goes ignored until you need it. And it is a community benefit that serves the elderly, the unhoused, the nurses and doctors and CNAs are amazing. Many nonprofits, many hospices are nonprofits and support
I didn't even know that. I didn't even realize it was a charity. Like,
not
I
all
just
of them, but many of them are.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to have to look up and see what my local one is, but I think that's really good suggestion. So thank you. What about the last really good book that you read?
I'm kind of late to the dance, but I did just read Project Hail Mary, which
Yeah.
is so good, where he goes into space and it was great and lovely and a lovely message about being human. And so I just finished that.
Okay, I'm about halfway, maybe not quite halfway through, and I put it down probably a year and a half ago because I was just bored. But you are not the first person that had told me how much they love it. So I'm like, okay, I got to pick this up again and just finish
Yeah.
it out. Yeah.
The ending is beautiful and it raises a lot of questions about what it means to be human and alive. And so it's really good.
Okay, I'm gonna read it with that kind of thought in mind. Okay, what am I learning about being human? I love that. That's good. Okay, what about a favorite vacation spot?
I mean, I love all mountains and I love all fishing. So if there are mountains and fishing, it's kind of any of those things. I obviously love Steamboat, but yeah, I would say that's kind of my perfect place. It's mountains and fishing.
Love that. I just met a friend last week and she has a little cabin in Canada, like some remote location right on a lake, and she loves to fish and that's what she does. She just goes there for a couple weeks and does fishing and
Yep.
yeah, that's really cool. Yes, these fishermen, they are a breed all their own. I cannot catch a fish to save my life. Seriously. Well, I probably would to save my life if I had to, but I've
Yep.
tried.
I am that.
All right. Name one thing that you try to do every day.
As I said, I try and get outside
Get
every day.
outside.
Vitamin D is crucial for our biology and it is really good for my well-being.
For sure. Okay. Well, what do you think I should try next?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like you're doing it. Your coaching certificate sounds like an incredible program. And I think completing that and then seeing where that thread takes you is going to be remarkable. And I can't wait to see where you go.
It is exciting and I'm learning now, so I need lots of practice. So I'll put a link. I have a Calendly. If people want some free coaching, then they can go and sign up and have a little bit of free coaching so I can
Good.
have the practice.
That's huge. That's huge. It's an incredible offer. And you're just such a good listener. You're going to be brilliant at it. I know it.
Thank you, Meredith. I really appreciate it. It has been really fun getting to know you better. And I'm so looking forward to when we get some snow, we will actually go skiing together.
It's a date. That sounds great.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being here. Where can people find you if they want to find you?
My business website is ravenyard.com. I have a personal kind of speaking website that's meredithparfet.com. I am chaplain MBA on Instagram. So
Okay. And we will tag you and put it in the show notes. And yeah, we didn't even get into your speaking stuff, but you do a lot of speaking around the country, right? Around the world. Do you go international a little bit?
yeah, I do sometimes.
That's pretty exciting. Well, good. Well, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate it. And yes, and have a wonderful Sendy day.
Okay, you too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
In the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, do something every day that scares you. If you've made it to the end of this podcast, thank you. I am currently working on becoming a certified life coach through the Jody Moore Better Than Happy program. I practice causal coaching, and that means we work on the root of the problem. If you're not showing up how you want to in your relationships, your home or work duties, your beliefs, or your health, life coaching may be exactly what you need. Sometimes we just need a switch to make the thoughts change, which affects the feelings and the behaviors to have the results you want. If you want to be sendy but don't know how, life coaching could be the first sendy step to finding your courage. The techniques I have learned have been so useful for me and thousands of others. As I'm training to become fully certified, I would love to coach you completely free. This offer will be available for the next 3 months, so be sure to sign up before June of 2026. If you would like a completely free and confidential coaching session with me, Becky Brower, the original Sendy Mom, please feel free to sign up on the link in the show notes. Just look for the Becky Brower free coaching link and sign up for a time that works for you.